Welcome back to another episode of Noble Thoughts. I'm your host, Brittany Noble, and today we're shining a light on some true hometown heroes, volunteer firefighters. These are the men and women who answer the call, often while balancing full-time jobs, families, and just everyday life. We have Steve Hirsch with us. He is the chair of the NVFC. Steve, tell us a little bit more about your organization.
Sure. Thanks for having us here, and thanks for highlighting the job that all these men and women do protecting their neighbors when they need it the most. So, the National Volunteer Fire Council is made up of firefighter associations from all across the United States. And obviously, they're in Indiana. The Indiana State Firefighters Association is our member and sends directors to us to meet in various meetings. So, our mission is to help volunteer firefighters be well trained, make sure that they're proficient, competent in what they're doing, and also that we're looking out for them and protecting their health and safety.
Tell us how you got into this work, Steve.
Well, so I was a year old, I guess, when this all started because my dad started the fire district in my hometown in 1963. I was born in 1962, so they allowed me to hold a hose for that first few years. Not really true, but for several years, I followed my dad around and spent a lot of time in the fire stations, as a lot of firefighters, volunteer firefighters do. It becomes a calling for you. It's kind of built into your DNA to be a firefighter. And then, I've been the chairman of the NVFC now for about 6.5 years. I've been an officer in the Kansas State Firefighter Association for over 25 years.
Impressive. Tell us about this partner with State Farm, the
Sure.
partnership.
Yeah, this is a great partnership with State Farm. Last year was the first year for that program. They committed some funds, and then they quickly saw the need and increased the amount of funding. And then this year they've increased the funding again to where State Farm is now providing $1.5 million for $10,000 grants to 150 fire departments all across the nation. I believe we have 44 states where fire departments applied and were awarded.
So, seven fire departments here in the state of Indiana will receive some of these grants. How will this be used and how is it beneficial for the community?
Sure. Fire equipment is expensive, and so the budgets are tight. We have fire departments in Kansas that have budgets of less than $5,000 per year total. I'm sure there are probably fire departments in Indiana that are very similar. So, $10,000 maybe doesn't sound like a lot of money, but for some of these smaller rural fire departments, it's a big thing. So they'll be able to buy equipment uh, so that they can protect their neighbors.
Could you tell us about some of this equipment that they'll be able to purchase and how it may be used?
Sure, I don't specifically know what their application said because I don't have those in front of me, but I'm sure that they're buying a hose, they're probably buying rescue equipment, all sorts of things that their firefighters will need to be able to complete the mission that they're tasked with.
Could you tell us about how or why outside support like this is so beneficial for
Mhm.
the departments?
A lot of fire departments have to rely upon grant funding from some source. There are some federal grant funds available, but those tend to be extremely competitive and generally on the smaller amounts. They're probably not worth the time of the local fire department to apply for. But these grants from State Farm, they're wonderful. They're not overburdened with a lot of paperwork, and they can get a little bit of money, $10,000, and that can go a long way for a lot of these fire departments.
Researchers say that volunteer firefighters make up about 65% of the US fire service. Um, what should viewers or listeners take away from that?
Sure. Well, in a lot of our small communities all across the nation, if it were not for volunteer firefighters protecting their communities, they would simply be without any type of fire protection or rescue protection EMS service. So it's so important, and I'd certainly encourage people who are listening here to get on to the NVFC website that deals with recruitment and retention. It's www.makemeafirefighter.org. They can type in their zip code and they'll be connected with a fire department in their area that's actually looking for help. There's very few fire departments, volunteer fire departments in the nation that don't need additional help. There's very few volunteer fire departments that, maybe people don't want to volunteer to go into burning buildings, but I'll guarantee you that every one of those fire departments could use a case of water, could use a plate of cookies, could use anything like that, if nothing else, just to show the support of their community. And of course, the local community's prayers too, that they won't get hurt during their mission events.
Could you tell us, since I have your attention, about some of the bigger challenges that firefighters face?
Sure. For example, my fire department, I'm in a county of less than 2,500 people in the entire county. I have 990 square miles of response territory, so it can be a long distance for me to have to respond. We're just now looking at buying a new fire truck. That new fire truck's going to run, probably in the $600,000 range. Now, that's quite a bit when you consider that we have a population of 2,500 people. And that's the bigger ticket items, but SCBA tanks that go on the back that people see. Sometimes they call them air tanks. People will call them air tanks, but they're actually breathing air. Those are close to $10,000 a piece. The gear that they wear, $6,000 to $7,000 a piece. So everything costs a lot of money. So how do local fire departments handle that? Well, they start buying used stuff, and there's a lot of used equipment out there that's good. A lot of them rely upon hand-me-downs from bigger departments and more well-situated departments, which is okay, but it can be dangerous as well. And of course, the big thing, um, besides the funding and what things cost today, is making sure that they can recruit enough firefighters, because we know that we don't have as many volunteers as what we had 20 years ago. There's a variety of reasons, and I don't think there's any cookie cutter to that. What works in one fire department to recruit new people is not what's going to work in another one. But um, you know, we want all ages. We need to make sure that we're recruiting our young people, but we also need to we need to recruit all ages, because there's somebody out there who could volunteer to take pictures for our fire department so that we could use them for training purposes. There are people out there who used to drive a truck for a living who would be willing to drive our tanker or apparatus to a fire scene. They may not want to go inside a building, but they'd be willing to effectively and safely drive a piece of fire apparatus. Frankly, in my fire department, I'm always looking for the person who would be willing to clean my bathrooms, because nobody else seems to want to do it. But there's just a whole wealth of things that people can do to volunteer for their fire department, their local fire department, that don't necessarily involve going into burning buildings. Finding a good IT person, a computer person, finding somebody who can write grants for us. All those are very critical and very needed in the volunteer fire service.
As we begin to wrap up, what do you want listeners to know?
Well, first off, pray for us, because we need that. We need that every day, that somebody doesn't get hurt throughout the day. That goes a long way. But the other is please consider, volunteering for your local fire department. If your house is on fire, do you want to wait an hour for a fire truck to show up because the one that's situated in your community is either understaffed or just simply doesn't exist anymore? Do you want to be hanging upside down in a car from a seatbelt, and wait 30 or 45 minutes for a fire department to show up to cut you out? Do you want to wait 45 minutes when you're having a heart attack for an ambulance to show up? And so it becomes a matter of, our job is to protect our neighbors when they're having the worst possible day, but that neighbor might be you someday. So we need you to volunteer as well. That's about community too, because there are fire departments, there are communities that have grown smaller over time. I'm sure in Indiana, the same thing would be true as in Kansas, and they're not able to staff a fire department. And that the fire department tends to be kind of the hub of activity in the community. So that's what's going to keep their community alive too, and it provides a valuable service for people that live there.
Gosh, this is so good. Such good information, Steve. If people may have the money to donate, but they don't have the time, is there any way that they can send that money towards you, or how can they help?
I can guarantee you there's not a volunteer fire department out there that's going to send that money back. Anything that people can come up with. Fire departments, in terms of funding range a whole, it's across a whole range. And in my part of the world, probably most of them that are west of the Mississippi are tax supported. And so we don't have, we have a nice steady stream of funding, but there's still fire departments out here that are tax supported, but yet have very little in the way of a tax base or support. East of the Mississippi, a lot of those are subscription fire departments. Firefighters are out there not only risking their lives, but they're also barbecuing chicken and flipping pancakes in order to raise money to keep those trucks out on the street. So, support them whenever you can, and money's great. There are a lot of other things they can do to support their local fire department as well.
Steve, thank you for giving us an inside look at what it looks like to be a volunteer firefighter. We just truly appreciate you for sharing your noble thoughts. Steve Hirsch, the chair of the National Volunteer Fire Council. Thank you for sharing your noble thoughts.
Thank you, Brittany.